for people to call if they believe they've been stopped or targeted by the police on the basis of race. And we had received thousands of calls. And so I was spending my afternoon interviewing one young black man after another who had been stopped, searched, sometimes brutalized by the police for no apparent reason other than the color of his skin. And this young man walks into my office with a stack of papers like this. He had taken detailed notes of his police encounters over a 9-month period of time. He had experienced a series of stops and searches and some brutality. Witnesses, names of some officers, even some badge numbers. Just an extraordinary amount of documentation about the series of stops he experienced. And he was a good-looking guy. He was charismatic. As I'm talking to him, I'm thinking, this is my dream plaintiff. This is my poster boy that we're going to use to sue the Oakland Police Department. And his story was corroborated by the stories we received from others. And I was getting excited. We were talking, and then he said something, and it catches my ear. I said, wait a second. Wait, did you say you have a felony? And he gets quiet. And then he says, yeah, I have a felony. You know, I have a felony. I have a drug felony. I was trained. The police planted drugs on me, and they beat up my friend, and you know, I was innocent, but I had to plea out, and he starts telling me this whole story about how he was trained and drugs were planted on him and all this. And I just stopped listening. I said, I'm sorry, but we cannot represent you if you have a felony. I said, there's no way we're going to be able to, you know, go to court and in the media and say the police shouldn't have treated him that way. Well, they're going to argue, of course we should be keeping an eye on him. He's a drug felon, and the media will be all over your criminal history. And, you know, no, we can't do that. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It shouldn't be that way, but we can't represent him. And he becomes increasingly upset and angry. He starts telling me about what had happened to him and how he was innocent. And I just said, I'm sorry. We can't represent someone who has a criminal record. And then he becomes enraged. And he said, you are no better than the police. You're treating me just like them. The minute I tell you I'm a felon, you just stop listening. You can't even hear what I have to say. It's like, what am I supposed to do? I can't get a job. I'm living in my grandmother's basement. I can't even get food stamps because of my felony. How am I supposed to take care of myself as a man? What's to become of me? What's to become of me? You're no better than the police. It's like, good luck finding one young black man in my neighborhood. They haven't got to yet. They've gotten to us already. They've got to us. And he snatches those papers out of my hand and starts whipping them up into tiny little pieces and letting the paper just fly through the room. You're no better than the police. He turns around and walks out. Well, a few months after that, I was doing a public access television show in his neighborhood. Public access TV. We were organizing several thousand people to go to the state capitol or protest the governor's refusal to sign racial profiling legislation. We've been holding town hall meetings up and down the state. So we were doing this final push to get people to turn out for the demonstration. And it was broadcasting live from his neighborhood. And the minute the show ends, he comes bursting into the studio carrying this dirty potted plant. And he shoves it into my arms, and he's emotional on the verge of tears. And he says, I'm here to just tell you I'm sorry. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I shouldn't have treated you that way. And I said, I see you out there trying to help our people, trying to do something that's good. I shouldn't have treated you that way. I would have bought you some flowers. I still have a job. I snatched this major urban areas, more than half of working